Have you ever wondered how well you really know the person sleeping next to you? Not in the romanticized sense, the poetry, the anniversaries, the filtered photos, but in the deeper, quieter spaces. When money is involved, when power shifts, when masks start to slip. What would you see if you looked beyond the familiarity and into the patterns? My name is Daniel Keaton. I'm 44. I manage wealth for a living, and I've seen what betrayal looks like on paper, how it shows up first in numbers, not words. This isn't just a story about heartbreak, it's about precision, about the quiet planning that happens when you stop reacting and start observing, and how sometimes the best revenge is just being 5 steps ahead before the damage is even done. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted or suspect you might be missing something right in front of you, stay with me. Because this is the kind of story that makes you rethink everything. And if you find yourself feeling something along the way, anger, satisfaction, or maybe a bit of quiet validation, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. Stories like this aren't just told, they're warnings. The morning she left didn't start with a storm. It began in silence, the kind that wraps around your shoulders like a damp coat you didn't ask for. I sat at the breakfast bar in our Austin home, sipping black coffee that had already gone lukewarm, watching Melissa glide around the kitchen in her new silk robe. Her phone was glued to her hand like always, her thumb dancing across the screen as she muttered something about an opportunity in Los Angeles. "We need a change," she said, not really looking at me. "You could work remotely now, right? I just feel like my brand could really take off there." I gave a small nod and returned my gaze to the financial reports on my tablet. I wasn't being dismissive, I was being strategic. Because something in her voice wasn't just restless, it was already gone. Melissa had been saying things like this more often, talking about reinvention alignment, detoxing from energy that didn't serve her. The irony was rich. I was the one paying for all this enlightenment. Still, I said nothing. Her tone that morning was clipped, annoyed, like I was slowing her down. She mentioned Zane again, her coach at the studio she'd joined 3 months ago. 20-something, according to her, a brilliant motivator. He was helping her realign her purpose. Right. I watched her toss a protein bar in her gym bag, flash a half smile in my direction, and walk out the door without saying goodbye. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. As if some part of me had already accepted what was coming. I closed my tablet and pulled up our shared bank account. The numbers don't lie. And lately, they were telling a story louder than words ever could. That was the morning I knew. She wasn't planning a future with me anymore. She was preparing an exit, and I wasn't about to be caught off guard. I've always believed numbers speak before people do. They whisper first, then warn if you know how to listen. That afternoon, after Melissa had left for yet another one of her energy calibration sessions, I sat down at my home office and did what I've done for clients for over 2 decades. I audited. Not their portfolios, ours. The joint account was bleeding slowly but consistently. $1,200 to a boutique yoga studio in East Austin. Not a membership fee, those are a fraction of that cost. This was a personal coaching package. I dug deeper. Week after week charges were logged under names I didn't recognize. A Juice Cleanse subscription that billed $300 a month. An Airbnb charge in Marfa the same weekend she'd told me she was with her sister on a healing retreat. Then came Zane's name, a $680 transaction labeled Zed Wellness Systems, another under Zen Fuel Coaching. And a third $1,500 categorized as business development support. Melissa had no business, no development, just a growing pile of receipts that all pointed in the same direction. I paused, heart steady, and pulled Melissa's calendar up on our shared account. Appointments labeled alignment session breathwork and sacred masculine integration, all booked at the same address, Zane's studio. I sat back, not in shock, not even anger, just clarity. Zane wasn't just a coach, he was the exit strategy. And Melissa, in all her spiritual awakening, hadn't considered that the man she married tracks cash flow like most men track football stats. The last red flag was almost poetic. A recurring monthly payment to a shell company I recognized because I'd helped establish it for a former client's tax strategy. Melissa had no idea it was traceable. That's when it stopped being emotional. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a financial shift. A tactical move on her part, but she forgot who she was married to. She'd been spending like I wouldn't notice. But what she didn't know, what made me sit still and start planning, was that I'd already noticed months ago. And now I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to prepare. Melissa and I met when we were just starting out. She was the bright one, confident, socially magnetic, with a degree in media communications and a minor obsession with astrology. I was the grounded type. Numbers, risk, strategy, long-term planning. Opposites, yes, but we fit like two puzzle pieces that made sense only when snapped together. We got married 5 years after college, built a modest life in Austin, and slowly turned it into something enviable, a craftsman-style house in Hyde Park Private School. For our son vacations, we used to dream about when we had nothing but IKEA furniture and hand-me-down wine glasses. For a long time, we balanced each other. I handled the finances, the planning, the structure. She handled the life around it, birthdays, people, color. When our son Caleb was born, Melissa threw herself into motherhood with the same passion she once had for building her boutique consulting firm. And when I hit my stride in wealth management, Melissa decided to scale back work. I supported that. She wanted time to focus on herself. I gave everything to everyone else, she used to say. Now I want to see what's left for me. At first, it made sense. She started journaling, took classes in integrative wellness, and joined local women's circles. I respected it. Everyone needs something of their own. But over the years, that quiet self-discovery began to harden into something else, something more self-centered. Her reflection time turned into retreat weekends. A part-time interest in wellness turned into a full-time identity. And slowly, I became part of the old world she was trying to transcend. Still, I never questioned her intentions out loud. I worked, I provided. I kept things stable. Stability had always been my love language. But what I didn't realize then, what seems so clear now, is that stability was the very thing she began to resent. Not because it failed her, but because it reminded her of a version of herself she wanted to leave behind. So she went looking for fire again, and apparently she found it in a 25-year-old wellness coach who thought vision boards counted as a business plan. It's strange how distance doesn't always arrive with slammed doors or raised voices. Sometimes it creeps in softly, like the way someone starts answering your questions with half a smile and full distraction. Melissa's phone was always within reach. Notifications buzzed constantly, and when I asked about them, she'd laugh and say it was just her group chat from the studio. "We're planning a sound bath next week," she'd say. You wouldn't get it. She was right. I didn't. But I did notice when the sound baths turned into overnight trips. When dinners we used to enjoy together became solo evenings with leftovers and empty chairs. When she started coming home in different clothes than she'd left in sometimes, with damp hair and the scent of eucalyptus that didn't come from anything in our house. I tried to bring it up once, gently. "Is everything okay with us?" I asked over dinner one night. Melissa didn't look up from her phone. "You're being paranoid, Daniel. I'm finally doing something for me. You should be happy for me." But I wasn't paranoid. I was trained. In my world, subtle shifts in behavior are never just noise, they're signals. Signals of risk, signals of movement. And Melissa was moving. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally, she was already on the other side of the fence, building a new life while I was still mowing the lawn. The more I observed, the clearer it became. She was drawn to the feeling of becoming someone new, someone untethered. And Zane Young fit filled with the kind of vague spiritual nonsense that passes as wisdom on social media was the mirror she chose to see herself through. "He understood her," she said one evening. "He listens." She didn't say it like a compliment to him. She said it like an indictment of me. That was the night I stopped trying to fix anything. Because this wasn't about saving a marriage anymore. It was about managing exposure like I would with any high-risk portfolio. And Melissa had become my most volatile investment. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change the way I looked at her. That was intentional. When a market starts showing signs of collapse, you don't panic, you reposition. Quietly, strategically. That's exactly what I did. The following Monday, I scheduled a private meeting with my attorney, Angela Blanchard. Smart, composed, and lethal in litigation. I didn't come to talk about divorce, not yet. I came to talk about structure asset protection specifically. Within a week, we had retitled the house under a revocable living trust with my brother as trustee. A second trust was created for the business. Retirement accounts were shifted, separated, and realigned under legal entities Melissa had no access to. And the most important part, all of it was done under the guise of tax efficiency. I told Melissa I was streamlining our financial architecture in case the new administration changed capital gains laws. She barely looked up from her phone. "As long as I don't have to sign anything complicated," she muttered. She signed every document I gave her. Never asked a single question. At night, while she scrolled through endless TikToks about feminine energy and healing masculine wounds, I reviewed legal filings and transfer confirmations. During the day, I moved our liquid assets out of joint accounts and into secure structures she couldn't touch. The joint checking remained for appearance. I left it there intentionally, like leaving a door half open to see if someone walks through. They did? She did? But not yet. By the end of the third week, everything important our home, the portfolio, the business, even our emergency reserves had been extracted from reach. On paper, we still looked married, still shared assets, still smiled in public. But behind the curtain, I had staged a full retreat, not out of fear, out of foresight, because I've watched enough empires fall, companies gutted, families torn apart by people who trusted the wrong person for too long. I wasn't going to be one of them. She was preparing her escape. And now I had prepared mine. It came on a Thursday, the kind of day where nothing seems urgent until it is. I was in a client meeting reviewing a multi-generational wealth transfer strategy when my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. I glanced at it mid-sentence, expecting a reminder or a schedule change. Instead, I saw 6 words that changed everything I've left. I took what's fair, no punctuation, no explanation, just a declaration. I asked my client for a brief moment, stepped out into the hallway, and opened the full message. Melissa had written, "Don't try to contact me. I need space. Zane and I are in LA. I've taken the money that's mine. Please respect that." There was no anger in me, no panic, just confirmation. I opened our joint bank account from my phone. Balance zero. $58,400 gone in one transfer. That was the household account, the only one she still had access to. She thought it was everything, thought she'd pulled the ultimate move. A clean break, a reinvention funded by a man she underestimated. She had no idea that what she'd taken was bait money. Set dressing, grocery funds, and auto-pay reserves, less than 7% of our actual assets. I walked back into my office and quietly closed the door. For 10 minutes, I sat in stillness, not because I didn't know what to do, but because everything was going exactly as I'd planned. I'd given her just enough rope. She used it. By the time she landed in California, I had already logged the withdrawal as unauthorized and contacted the bank's fraud department. Not out of spite, but documentation matters. Timelines matter. Paper trails win in courtrooms. The part that stung, if anything, was how predictable it all was. Melissa didn't even try to hide it. She sent a text like it was a breakup note in high school. Cold, transactional, shallow. But that's when I knew she didn't just leave me. She never really saw me to begin with. Which was fine, because now it was my turn to disappear legally, financially, and strategically. 3 days after Melissa's text, her attorney reached out. A downtown Los Angeles firm slick website, heavy branding, and a junior associate with a name that sounded freshly printed on a diploma. He introduced himself as representing Melissa Keaton in the preliminary stages of divorce proceedings. The message was confident, almost rehearsed. He requested a full list of marital assets, immediate disclosure of financial holdings, and a proposed temporary support arrangement. The kind of boilerplate threat that assumes the other party is caught off guard. I wasn't. I forwarded everything to Angela Blanchard with a short note, "Let's begin." Angela didn't flinch. She'd already anticipated the attack vector. That's what you hire someone like her for, not to argue, but to outmaneuver. She reviewed their demand, cross-referenced it against the restructuring we'd done weeks earlier, and called me directly. "They're working off an old playbook," she said. "They think your net worth is what they saw in the joint account." I almost laughed. That account hadn't held real weight in over a month. Melissa's legal team submitted documents referencing account numbers that no longer existed, property deeds that had been retitled, and business valuations that were irrelevant under the trust. Their strategy depended on one assumption: that I had been asleep at the wheel. Instead, I'd been quietly steering the ship into protected waters. When Angela submitted our reply, it was brief and surgical. All documentation was clean, legal, and already filed. There were no assets in my name that could be touched, no accounts that weren't covered, no business revenue unaccounted for. Melissa had expected to blindside me. Her attorney expected a man scrambling for damage control. What they received instead was a fortress built with foresight, sealed with silence, and reinforced by law. There's a certain kind of satisfaction that comes from knowing you don't have to fight back. You just have to let the other side swing at ghosts. And Melissa. She had walked straight into shadows, armed with a flashlight, and no idea how deep the dark went. While her legal team scrambled to catch up, Melissa was living like she'd won. Her Instagram lit up like a travel blog, sunset shots from Malibu rooftops, vegan brunches in West Hollywood, yoga poses on the beach, with captions about healing feminine energy. It was curated, deliberate, a highlight reel of reinvention. Zane featured prominently, of course, shirtless, tattooed, smiling like a man who thought enlightenment came in smoothie form. Their life looked effortless, expensive, and unsustainable. I watched silently, not out of bitterness, but calculation, because those photos weren't just vanity. They were timestamps. They showed the progression of spending, the escalation of lifestyle, and most importantly, the burn rate. I knew how much she had taken. I also knew exactly how far that money could stretch in a city like Los Angeles, especially with someone like Zane in the passenger seat. She wasn't budgeting. She was broadcasting. And for a woman who thought she'd left the old world behind, she certainly seemed desperate to prove something to it. Meanwhile, back in Austin, I was compiling records. Each Airbnb stay, each luxury restaurant tagged in her stories, each product she promoted matched against dates, account activity, and card charges. Melissa hadn't just taken money. She'd given me a map of how she spent every dollar, in real time, publicly. The truth is, people rarely hide who they are. They just assume no one's watching closely. She thought she'd upgraded, that leaving a boring financial planner for a lifestyle guru made her brave, awakened, evolved. But what she really did was downgrade stability for spectacle. She mistook silence for weakness, mistook my calm for surrender. And as she flaunted a new life built on the bones of our shared savings, I realized something important. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. Because every picture, every video, every fake smile in front of a leased sports car was another entry in a growing file, evidence that she wasn't just dishonest. She was reckless. And I had the receipts. Literally. She may have thought she was rewriting her story, but she didn't realize I was already writing the ending. Infidelity hurts. But what Melissa did went beyond that. It wasn't just emotional disloyalty, it was financial exploitation. And when you manage risk for a living, there's a distinct point where betrayal stops being personal and starts being criminal. I started connecting the dots in a spreadsheet. A habit, really. Each row told a story. A $320 coaching fee labeled under our business card. A $600 dinner at a restaurant she'd claimed was part of a women's networking event. Venmo payments split across 3 weeks, all with vague captions like Energy Session Sacred Space or Support for Growth. At first glance, they seemed like nothing, but in context, they were camouflage. What really made my stomach turn was the pattern. Zane wasn't just her affair partner. He was her dependent. There were charges for his plane tickets, 2 of them purchased using our business travel rewards account. His supplements, his studio rental deposit, even a logo design for his so-called coaching brand, all traced back to joint funds. Then came the kicker. She'd been using our business credit card for recurring payments on a website hosting platform registered in his name. This wasn't just cheating, it was a transfer of marital wealth to another man under false pretenses behind my back. I cross-checked dates with GPS metadata from receipts. While she claimed to be on meditation retreats, she was renting beachfront properties with Zane. Hotels, gas stations, wellness spas, every financial move lined up perfectly. Her lies weren't just careless, they were planned. But here's the part she never anticipated. I wasn't just gathering evidence for a divorce. I was building a case. Melissa hadn't just left. She'd embezzled funds from our marriage. She'd used business resources under fraudulent claims. She'd spent joint money supporting a third party. That changes things, because adultery may sway public opinion. But financial fraud changes court rulings. It alters settlements. It opens doors to restitution claims and even criminal consequences in the right jurisdiction. Angela, my attorney, reviewed the data and said one word: leverage. Melissa thought she had taken control. What she'd actually done was give me every legal reason to burn the bridge. And I was already lighting the match. The moment things shifted wasn't loud, it was procedural. After 2 weeks of back and forth through lawyers, Angela submitted a formal notice of marital asset dissipation. Attached was a detailed breakdown of every transaction Melissa had authorized using joint and business funds to benefit Zane personally. It wasn't just compelling, it was devastating. The spreadsheet alone ran 12 pages. Accompanied by receipts, card statements, phone logs, and digital records, it painted a picture so precise that even a lenient judge would have trouble ignoring it. Then came the silence. 3 full days without a single email from Melissa's legal team. And then, her. A message, not from her attorney, from her personal number. "Can we talk without lawyers?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, not because I didn't expect it, because I had. Melissa only ever reached out directly when things got out of control. And clearly she had realized just how far things had gone. We met the next evening at a cafe she used to love. She showed up, late sunglasses, on trying to look composed. But the cracks were there, nervous hands, breathy voice, the kind of uncertainty you only feel when your confidence has turned into fear. "Daniel," she said softly, "this is getting out of hand." "No," I replied calmly, "this is exactly the size of what you did." She tried to pivot. Told me we'd had 17 good years, that we shouldn't let one mistake destroy everything. I didn't respond. She said Zane had real plans, that he needed capital, that things had moved faster than she intended. I raised an eyebrow. "You stole from your marriage to fund your affair, then expected me to absorb the loss." Her eyes welled, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. Angela was right. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This was leverage. Melissa hadn't just broken vows. She'd breached fiduciary trust. That distinction changes everything in court. And now she knew it. She wanted forgiveness. What she was actually asking for was leniency. But I don't extend that to people who burn the bridge while I'm still standing on it. The settlement meeting was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in Angela's downtown office. Neutral ground glass walls, espresso machine humming in the corner. The kind of place where empires are quietly protected or dismantled. Melissa arrived late, flanked by her attorney. She wore a long beige coat over yoga gear sunglasses perched too deliberately on her head, like she couldn't decide whether to play calm or contrite. I didn't stand when she walked in. I didn't smile. I just waited. Angela opened the meeting without ceremony. "Before we begin," she said, sliding a folder across the table, "we'd like to enter into record a timeline of asset misuse." Melissa blinked. Her lawyer frowned. Inside that folder was everything 6 months of evidence showing how Melissa used marital and business funds to support Zane, his rent, his meals, his travel, his website, hosting even his phone bill. It was neatly categorized by date amount and beneficiary. This, Angela said calmly, isn't just adultery, it's financial misappropriation. In Texas, that directly impacts asset division. Melissa looked at me, eyes wide. Daniel, I cut her off. You didn't just leave. You funded another man's lifestyle with money you didn't earn. Her lawyer cleared his throat. We'd like to propose a starting point for equitable distribution. Angela didn't flinch. No, here's our offer. She placed a single-page agreement on the table. It stated that Melissa would keep the $58,000 she had already withdrawn. In exchange, she would sign a full waiver of any claim to remaining marital assets. No alimony, no further negotiation, no second chances. Melissa's face dropped. That's not even enough to live on, Angela replied. It was enough to leave on. I stayed quiet. Her attorney reviewed the document, growing paler with each line. He knew. He saw the leverage. He saw what would happen if this went to court. Melissa turned to me, voice barely a whisper. Zane's expecting me to help launch his program. You were going to build your next chapter with stolen bricks, I said flatly. Now you can figure out how to pay for it. This wasn't revenge. It was an audit, and the numbers no longer worked in her favor. The settlement offer lingered on the table for 2 days. Melissa's lawyer tried to stall filing soft objections, suggesting clarifications. But Angela stayed firm. No adjustments. No compromises. The deadline was Friday at 5 p.m. While they deliberated, I made one last move, not out of spite, but out of principle. I drove to the wellness studio where Melissa had met Zane, a high-end facility posing as a spiritual sanctuary, all warm lighting and overpriced essential oils. I asked for the manager and introduced myself not as her husband, but as a business owner concerned about unauthorized use of funds and possible liability. It didn't take long to crack the surface. Turns out, Zane had never completed the certification the studio required for independent coaching. He'd submitted falsified credentials, some online course from a now-defunct site. Worse, there were already quiet complaints. A few female clients had raised concerns about inappropriate boundaries during sessions. Nothing formal, but the pattern was there. I handed over a packet documentation of charges made under our business credit card payments labeled as health expenses and screenshots from Melissa's social media publicly tying Zane to the business through unauthorized branding. That was all they needed. He was fired that afternoon. By evening, I received a message from Melissa. Her tone had changed, less self-righteous, more desperate. Zane lost his job. His visa might be affected. We're not sure what to do. I didn't reply. Later that night, another message. Daniel, I know you're angry, but this could ruin everything for him. Please, don't push further. But I wasn't pushing. I was correcting course. Zane had entered our lives like a whisper. Now he was gone in a gust of accountability. Friday arrived. Angela received the signed waiver from Melissa's lawyer at 4:42 p.m. Done. No more claims. No more threats. Just a clean legal break. Melissa and Zane were out. Of the house. Of the assets. Of the plan. And while they were left figuring out how to fund their half-finished dreams, I was already preparing the next chapter of mine. Not with noise, but with precision. Because sometimes the most devastating move you can make is the quiet one no one sees coming. The papers were signed, notarized, and filed. Just like that, 17 years dissolved into a series of scanned PDFs and court stamps. There was no final argument, no teary confrontation, just silence and closure. I sold the house within a month. Too many rooms, too many echoes. Every hallway held a memory I no longer wanted to keep dusting off. I bought a smaller place in Denver, a clean space, no ghosts, no history, no lavender candles, or forgotten yoga mats stuffed behind furniture. Melissa and Zane, from what I heard, didn't last. After he lost his position and his visa status entered review, they tried relocating to Mexico, hoping to launch some kind of coaching retreat. It failed before it started. Apparently, enlightenment doesn't pay customs fees. A mutual friend told me Melissa now works part-time at a wellness cafe near Tulum. Not managing, not building anything, just serving acai bowls and cleaning up after tourists in linen pants who speak in affirmations. I didn't feel anything, not pity, not glee, just peace. Clients began referring more business my way after word got around about the divorce. They said they trusted a man who could survive that kind of ambush with his assets and his dignity intact. I never told them everything, never bragged. I just offered better advice, sharper than before. Because once you've had your life torn open from the inside and rebuilt it piece by piece, you start seeing things others don't. One evening, I found an old shoebox in storage, our wedding photos. Melissa looked radiant, youthful, real. For a moment, I let myself feel something close to nostalgia. Then I remembered the text, the stolen money, the lies told with straight eyes. I closed the box and dropped it off at a Goodwill the next morning. That weekend, I took my first real vacation in over 2 years. No itinerary, no phone service, just a cabin near the tree line, a good bottle of scotch, and a fire I didn't have to share. No one to impress, no one to explain myself to, just silence. And this time, it felt like home. People often think betrayal hits like a storm, loud, fast, destructive. But in my experience, it's quieter than that. It creeps in through routines disguised as disinterest, as distraction, as self-discovery. And by the time you feel the collapse, the damage has already been done. What saved me wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was clarity, preparation, the discipline to protect what I'd built long before I ever realized it was under threat. In this world, love may be unconditional, but partnership never should be. Trust is earned, and when it's broken, there's no dignity in reacting with chaos. There's strength in staying calm, documenting everything, and walking away with your values and your future intact. If you've ever been through something like this or seen the signs too late, you're not alone. I hope this story reminded you that silence is not weakness, and that justice, when it comes, doesn't always raise its voice. If this story struck a chord with you, leave a simple comment, "I held the line." Because sometimes that's all we can do, and it's enough. And if you found value in this story, consider subscribing. Not for me. For the version of yourself that refuses to be caught off guard again.